My mom hates the name I picked for my son and wants to change it. Story: my wife and I, both late 20s, had our first child together in June. Before he was born, there was a lot of talk about names from different family members on both sides, but the pressure to tell was on my side specifically. We didn't tell a soul what the name would be until our son was born and we had left the hospital. My parents were disappointed when we announced our son's name. My family are very traditional in how they named us. We were each named after grandparents, and that's how they feel everyone should name their kids. My wife's family don't have a tradition when it comes to naming babies. They just name them and go. No fuss or insisting on certain names. But my wife's side tends to favor more uncommon and unusual names. My wife's and my taste tends to lean a lot more to her side than to mine, which is how we ended up choosing the name Hollis for our son. This was not something my parents liked because they expected our son to be either Jack, my dad, or Parker, my father-in-law. But I know they were expecting a little Jack to be born, so that added to their reaction. But they quizzed us on our choice to break tradition, and I told them it wasn't a tradition my wife's family used, and we decided we weren't going to have one either. Over the last couple of months, both parents have questioned why, have wanted to discuss other names for future babies. My mom has been the worst by far. She asked why we went with something so unlike the names we have in our family. I told her our family wasn't the only family involved, but that we also didn't take the family tastes into account. We went with what we liked. She pointed out our tastes were a lot like my IL's, and I said yes, but that it wasn't about my IL's and their taste. It was about my wife's and my taste. I told her I was done discussing it, and since that point, I now change the topic or end the conversation when she brings it up or refuses to let it go. We had a little naming ceremony on Saturday, and my mom decided she was going to dig in her heels about the name, and she told me we'd picked a stupid name and she hated it. She wanted us to change it and name him Jack or Parker. She told me we had no business breaking a long-held tradition in our family, and there's a reason those traditions are there, so foolish people can't name their babies the worst names imaginable. She also said my ILs must be so smug, thinking they'll have at least 2 stupidly named grandkids, like they had all stupidly named kids. I lost my temper. I told her to shut up and accept that we're not naming our kids like she and Dad named me and my siblings, and I told her she would need to leave and learn to be more respectful, because I would not take those insults against my wife or her family lying down. My mom hated being told to shut up, and she said I had no excuse for rudeness to her face. I thought she was crazy when she was rude. Am I the a-hole, though? Response 1. NTA. If your mother wants to have a say in naming a baby, then she should have another baby. She was unnecessarily rude and disrespectful to you, your wife, your ILs, and your child. I'd seriously consider going no contact with her if she doesn't change her behavior, as your son will pick up on it as he grows up, and it is not acceptable to expose your family to her. Reply 1. At the very least, very low contact is being considered if she and my dad cannot let this go. I do not want them insulting my kids' names to their faces in the future. Reply 2. This is where she's been incredibly stupid and short-sighted. I could never complain about my grandchildren's name. I'd just be too happy and delighted they were safely here, healthy and ready to spoil and make a fuss of everyone. Excited for future babysitting and times together. Reply 3, and it isn't a way out there. Name, like Run Triffids Run, is a name that merits at least some gentle questions, and I know someone who adopted that name for themselves. Hollis isn't even that unusual, just a bit uncommon. Reply 4. I find that grandparents who get to spend time with their grandchildren don't go questioning their child/child-in-law's parenting decisions. Reply 5. My thoughts exactly. The naming of my grandchildren was 100% up to my daughter and her husband. I named my children. They should have the same honor with theirs. Response 2. NTA. Tradition or not, this is your child. And any future children, no one gets to tell you what you should name your child. You could say, well, parents, that was your tradition. We decided to start our own tradition as a family. Personally, I love the name Hollis. As for Mom, unfortunately, this might be a deal breaker in going limited contact or no contact. You will have to set the example. Let parents know right off the bat that calling your child anything else than his name will not be tolerated. If they are at your place, you get up and show them the door, If you are at theirs, you get up and leave. Same with any outside venue or relative's home. If you are at relatives' home who are on mom and dad's side, you can let them know your boundaries as well. Curious, what was the middle name? Because I actually like either father's name as a middle name. Reply 1. Very low contact is being considered over this. It will depend on what the reaction after this is like, and whether they stop or continue insulting our son's name and my ILs and my wife and myself. We didn't use either father's name. We considered a few but went with Cameron in the middle ultimately. Reply 2. Your mother is prioritizing being confrontational about a decision that only concerned your wife and you, and the child obviously, but the little fella has no say in it so far. Instead of being supportive for your small family, she adds to the stress of baby raising by being a huge baby herself. Personally, I think she might bring this up so much out of jealousy because she had to follow tradition and probably could not name you the way she wanted to. But if she keeps fixating on how much she hates the name, she might end up disliking your son. Be on the lookout for any future favoritism towards other children in your extended family if you decide to let her be involved in your son's life. Reply 3. OP should ask his mom what name she wanted to give him if she hadn't had to follow tradition. I know my parents have remembered the top alternate names and the name they'd have given me if I'd been a boy. Reply 4. Your mom has insulted everyone in your family for a long period of time and you're still debating if having a relationship is worth. Reply 5. I'm going to guess this isn't the first time your mother/parents have been controlling. You need to make it very clear to them that any interference is not welcome and won't be tolerated. Tell them that the next time they utter a single critical word about you, your wife, your in-laws, or your parenting choices, they will not see you for at least 6 months. No contact, no photos, no nothing. If they can't regroup in those 6 months and accept that you're an adult capable of making your own decisions, the break might be permanent. I would also never invite them to another special event. Your mother thought nothing of throwing a tantrum and ruining what should have been a special day. Don't ever give her the opportunity to do that again. No holidays, no birthdays, no soccer games. If you're going to see them, it should be a random Tuesday, and the visit should immediately end the minute she says a single passive-aggressive thing. Response 3. Well, OP, you couldn't have handled it any better. I'd send her a text or email, something written, telling her that you are aghast at her insulting spewfest and you're leaving the ball in her court. When she presents you and your wife with a heartfelt apology for rudely overstepping and a promise never to do it again, you will resume contact. Until then, you have nothing more to say. Reply 1. And copy Dad, and potentially siblings if they are likely to be incorporated as flying monkeys, so that Mom can't change the narrative and Dad understands the parameters, especially if you have to show Mom the door. If he's her ride, he may have to leave too. Response 4. NTA. It's as simple as this. If the kid isn't theirs, they don't get to decide the name. If they have a naming tradition, it doesn't matter. Still not their kid, so it's not their decision. They have no right to insist the name be changed, and they shouldn't get crap talking the name, you or your wife, for picking that name and not a name they wanted you to pick. Tell them to either grow up and accept the name, or they can look forward to not seeing their grandkids. Reply 1. This is all it comes down to. Your parents had their opportunity to name children how they wanted when they had their kids. I don't understand why some people feel like everyone needs to adhere to whatever standards they themselves have chosen to adhere to. Response 5. NTA. And since she hates the name so much, it seems she hates the child attached to it by extension. Honestly, I would tell her that it's fine. Since she dislikes the name so much, she doesn't get to see the child attached to it until she calms her crap. I'd be worried about her calling him Jack behind your back, and you wouldn't even know until your son can speak and tell you what she's doing. Response 6. NTA. She also said my ILs must be so smug, thinking they'll have at least 2 stupidly named grandkids, like they had all stupidly named kids. I lost my temper. I told her to shut up and accept that we're not naming our kids like she and Dad named me and my siblings, and I told her she would need to leave and learn to be more respectful because I would not take those insults against my wife or her family lying down. My mom hated being told to shut up, and she said I had no excuse for rudeness to her face. I thought she was crazy when she was rude. Your mom kept at it after being told to stand down. And in this case, if you were an a-hole, you are, in my humble opinion, a justified a-hole. Reply 1. This isn't even about tradition. This is about OP's mom putting herself into competition with daughter-in-law's family. Classic case of rival in-laws. Reply 2. Ding, ding, ding. She's projecting. She thinks they are taking IL's side, and it only appears that way to her because the ILs are not being as difficult and critical as they are. Response 7. Good for you and your shiny spine for defending yourself, your wife, and baby. Congratulations, by the way. Your parents got to name their kids. Now you get to name yours. That's how it works. Edited to add, you're so not the a-hole. Response 8. NTA. I wonder if this is less about names and more about losing to the ILs. She sounds like she's afraid they will have more influence over you than she does. Okay, maybe influence isn't strong enough. It's power/control. Some people are like that. Nonetheless, what she did was rude as hell, and I'd be hurt and angry too because how dare she? Good luck, OP. Reply 1. I think that is some of it for sure. She feels like we chose a side instead of choosing our own taste. Reply 2. Plus, by having a family name, she can feel like she has some ownership over the grandchild and a closer relationship to them than your in-laws. Very much about competition. Reply 3. I am on mobile, so hopefully the spacing isn't weird. I completely understand going low contact, not the a-hole. I would be very cautious about leaving my child alone with my mother if I were in your situation, simply because I could see her picking a name and calling him Jack or Parker behind your back because that's what she thinks your son's name should be. We had a similar thing happen when we were naming my son. There's a tradition in my family that you give the firstborn son the same middle name as their father. So my son's middle name would have been David in that instance. However, my husband's family is Jewish, and apparently, according to my late mother-in-law, rest in peace, giving him that name would be considered bad luck because my husband's stepdad's name was David, and naming a child after a living relative is considered bad luck. We went around in circles for months, and it sucked. We just picked a different name because at the time it seemed easier, but I still hate to this day that my son's middle name isn't David, and I wish I had stood my ground. Response 9. Your parents are just stubborn old people, expecting the values they put on their traditions to naturally transfer to the newer generation. Doesn't work like that. With new generations follows different exposure leading to different values, not the a-hole. Good on you to back up your wife. Mother needs to be put in place though. If she doesn't back down, give her an ultimatum you can stand firm on. Then it's her choice. Reply 1. I think a lot of it is boomers never liking the traditions, but never feeling like they could go against them. Younger generations are doing things differently, and the boomers are jealous. Very I suffered so you must suffer too mindset. Traditions is just peer pressure from dead people. Reply 2. OP's parents are probably in their 50s. Solid Gen X. Stop calling everyone you disagree with a boomer. Response 10. NTA. You people are being a-holes and somehow think that's going to make us want to name a kid after you? Response 11. NTA, what to name your child is your decision to make. Your parents will just have to make their peace with that. Response 12. NTA, it's your kid and the only two people who have a say in naming it is you and your wife. You're both in agreement on the name, and that is what matters. If your parents don't back off, I would suggest lowering contact for a while. It just seems like a lot of stress during a time that should be focused on enjoying your son's start in life. Maybe some space will put things in perspective for your parents. Your son's name is nowhere near as important as his health and happiness. That should be what his grandparents want and care about above anything else. Response 13. NTA. No excuse for rudeness to her face. Ma'am, you have been nothing but rude. Sounds like your mother doesn't understand that you're grown and she can't demand blind respect and you do as she wants. It never ceases to amaze me that a grandparent can be so fussed over the name she isn't letting herself enjoy the new baby. Response 14. Tradition is peer pressure from dead people. Tell your mother that if the best reason she has for doing things is it's traditional, then she needs to stop doing things. And that it's fine for her to disagree with the way you raise your kids, but after she's shared her view once. She only gets to share it again on her way out of the door. Not the a-hole. Response 15, where did this long family tradition start? It was from your GRX4 grandma, who chose a name she wanted. Just start your own tradition. Your wife and her family have no problem. She is a control freak. Response 16. I don't get why parents like this think they are entitled to tell their kids what to name their kids. We didn't get to choose our names, so nobody has the right to take that same gift from us. If kids end up not liking the name, they can legally change it later, because yes, some people do give their kids atrocious names. But that's a different sub, not the a-hole. Response 17. All this fuss over names. Until I started reading Reddit, I never knew there were so many people who thought they had a right to give input to the name of a child that isn't theirs. In real life, I have never heard of any baby name drama, not the a-hole. Reply 1. I was always aware people could be a little opinionated when it came to other people's baby names, but never realized someone could go as far as my mom. Response 18. Well, you can't respect those who disrespect you. Naming your child is solely the parent's decision. It's not a family debate where the majority rule. Sure, everyone has different opinions on different names, but ultimately, they are just opinions. Mom's tantrum isn't going to get her what she wants, just alienate her from her grandchild. Response 19. NTA, insulting my baby and spouse to my face is a quick-fire way to guarantee you will never see me or them again. I would have politely told her just because she was too dumb to come up with original names doesn't mean you and your wife are, and she doesn't need to worry about what name he has since he is no longer a part of her family. Response 20. NTA. I thought you were going to say your son was named something bizarre like some celebrities do. Hollis wouldn't be in the top 10 of my list of names for a son, but it is perfectly acceptable. Your mother is probably most upset because she has had to realize you are no longer 5 years old and are able to think for yourself.